Hello and welcome back to episode 8 of the ID Boxing Podcast with me, your host, Rob Tebber. As always, I'd like to remind everybody to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, it is fight week and I am delighted to be joined by Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clark for our big Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia preview. Chaps, I'm very excited about this weekend. Not as excited as you by the looks of things, Barry.
You got your tracksuits on back to front.
It's not.
That's how excited he is.
Nike, no sponsor, not doing one sponsor this thing.
It's just this.
It's on your bum.
Yeah. Why are you looking at my bum?
I'm just thinking, like, are you in your pajamas again?
I think we're gonna have to have some words with Barry. But anyway, Andy, how are you? Looking forward to this week? No. I asked you how you were, and you decided to piss about.
What if I'm looking at your bum? What's the problem with that?
I'm really, really well, and very much looking forward to the fight this weekend. Honestly,
what's that?
Well, you know, if you are feeling a little bit tired, anybody, if you two need a little bit of a pick me up, then. Bit of product placement I was promised on the podcast this week. Lukasz chocolate made by my wife, and the reason it features is because they've been pestering me, these ingrates, to bring some in for a long time. So I decided I would bring it in.
We demand
today.
free stuff on the ID.
They do demand free stuff. They do.
He took the chocolate out the empty boxes.
Well, actually, there was 6 at home, and 2 of them were empty. So there was 4 of them I decided to bring in.
What's the difference?
The difference is those are all dark chocolate. The difference is where they're from. So it's Belize, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. They're all 70 or 73%.
So you have a bank account in each one of those countries, by the way.
Yeah, that's exactly
convenient.
Right. Yeah, we went there over the New Year to set it up.
We're going to try and put them some sort of product place.
Look at it. He's holding like it's a newborn baby.
We'll put them by my laptop because I'm the fat one, so it makes more sense for me to be the one who's endorsing.
But it makes no sense that
chocolate.
No white refined sugar. Coconut sugar.
No one's going to believe they stayed there for the full podcast and you haven't eaten them.
This is a really, really strange start to a podcast.
It is a strange start to a podcast. Back to the matter in hand. It's such a brilliant fight of the weekend, and I had a great afternoon yesterday. Disappeared off upstairs and just watched All Access, the couple of that have been released. Went back over some of their more recent fights, some of their older fights, and every time you look at it, every time you think about it, you're just reminded why this is exactly what boxing needs. And it's just so great that it's happening. And a line in particular from Garcia when he went on Mike Tyson's show just kind of really stuck with me, given the recent climate of people talking big and then delivering nothing. And he just said, me and Gervonta Davis have made plenty of money in the past. We will do in the future. And we could do that without fighting each other. Very, very comfortably. We could run in parallel lines, but we have chosen to do this. And I know that it's taken a little bit of while to sort out, and there's a catch weight and there's a rehydration clause and things like that, which are kind of standard in big fights, I guess. But it's just great that it's happening. Absolutely tremendous for the sport that it's happening, and I cannot wait for it.
Barry, we love a moan here on the ID Boxing Podcast, but it seems as though I'm already feeling the energy, already feeling like the exuberance ahead of looking forward to this weekend. It is a fight, as Andy says there, that boxing really, really needs, and we've got it. We're a few days away from what I think is going to be potentially a landmark moment for this generation of boxers.
Yeah, but it's a rematch, rehydration.
Oh, don't start, Barry. Let's come on to that in a bit.
We don't know what weight this at. Lightweights and super lightweights. What's going on? It's brilliant. And well done, boys. Well done. It's saviour of boxing. These are and what's happening a few weeks later, of course, a month later. Okay, with the other lightweights, it's just unbelievable stuff, and it's a great fight. I don't watch that 24/7 stuff, all access. As brilliant as it is, I don't want it to cloud my judgment. I can't
resist it.
No, they're brilliant stuff, and I miss out on it. I never watch them on purpose, even back in the Mayweather days, because they're all geared up to making you second guess your first thought. As long as your first thought of a fight, opinion of a fight, is an educated one as such, or a thought out when you understood. I'm going for him because I think. I got a feeling I like his shorts or whatever it is, the stupid things people go for. And then his dad came to Cardiff once, so I'm going to go for Garcia. It's. As long as you've got a reason behind your thought who's going to win, I try and stick with my first instinct, and so I don't watch them, unfortunately, but I wish I did. But it's a great fight. It can't. The only way it doesn't deliver is someone gets knocked out in the first round. Then you sort of go, oh, great, but we didn't see enough, which would be great if we can moan about it. But it's not. It's going to be a great fight, and it can finish at any stage.
You mentioned there about not kind of wanting your initial pick to be swayed. What was your initial pick? What is your initial pick for this?
Gervonta Davis, always.
And why?
Better fighter. I think he's more schooled. I think he has speed. I think his power is just, I said ticking all up. But whatever I say about Davis is pretty much what you can say about Ryan Garcia in many ways. But I do think he's smarter. Is shown to be tougher, just because we haven't seen Garcia be tough yet. That's the only reason why. Yeah, and I just always thought that he's the guy who had more experience, patient as well. I had to show patience. Going through boxing, guys who've been much taller than him, which he has done in the past. But this is his biggest test, I would say, maybe, possibly, because you got a Ryan Garcia here who can hit you going forward or going back with the same power. For a guy who doesn't, I keep saying the same thing, for a guy who doesn't bend his legs, Ryan Garcia, where he generates the power from. Speed is everything, I understand that. But I had speed, and I couldn't punch. So it's not everything, it's something else. And it's usually coming from the legs. But he doesn't bend his legs, so where do you get the power from? I'm genuinely asking, because I don't know. It's a natural thing. He turns from the waist, he gets a whip into the shot, I understand that. But you still got to push from your legs. Maybe his legs are so fast, he is bending them, I don't see it. But it's legs like this. But whether he's coming forward and drilling you with the right hand, or whether he makes you make a mistake and he throws that left hook as you're coming onto him, he put you to sleep with any shot. As can Gervonta Davis from the southpaw stance. I think that's a factor as well. I know Ryan Garcia said he likes to box southpaws because he thinks he can knock them out better. I'm not so sure. And also you've got to punch down. And you've got the reach, and that's gonna the reach will help, because if you can get Gervonta Davis coming forward with his feet off the floor, jumping into attacks, maybe try and get him and lean back with the left hook over that right hand, then he can put him to sleep. But I think he's going to find it difficult to find a guy who's coming up to him with fast feet, and a guy who might sit on the outside on the peripherals of your reach and force you to make a mistake as well. With Gervonta Davis, he's happy to sit back a bit. But also Gervonta Davis does switch off, as we've seen. He gets caught now and again, and by a bigger puncher like a Garcia who can just barely touch you and put you to sleep. That might be a problem. So I can sort of sway it to either way I want. This is it's a good fight, because you can just talk, and the whole conversation of actual bollocks that I'm talking, you can sway back and forth in my mind. I just give a reason why he can win, not a reason why he can win, not a reason why he can win, not a reason why he can win. In the same conversation, while I'm trying to gear up and sort of bolster my choice of Davis, and I've given you more reason why Garcia can win than Davis can win.
Yeah, there's a caveat for everything, isn't there? Everything you think of. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what words you're talking about, but caravan? There's a caravan for everything.
There is.
But yeah, Andy, you mentioned there about Ryan Garcia. It was probably a couple of years ago now when he first went on the Mike Tyson podcast, and there was that 2 weeks where it looked like it was going to happen, didn't it? And they were talking about it happening next. And I remember since then, and lightweight is super stacked and has been for the last 18 months, 2 years, probably obviously longer, but particularly
so little has happened until now.
So little has happened, but since those two had that FaceTime and had that bit, that's been the one that I've wanted. Yeah. Like, as much, I think Haney and Lomachenko is for the glory, I suppose, and for the belts and for the number one in the division. But there's something about the blend of characters between Davis and Garcia, both inside the ring and outside of the ring, that makes this, for me, the one to watch at lightweight.
Yeah, I agree. They've managed to kind of build up a little bit of a backstory there. I don't get the feeling there's any real personal animosity between these two at all, but they're two young undefeated fighters with big reputations, with big profiles, and they both want to be the best. And that's enough to build an intense, proper professional rivalry. They don't need to really invent any kind of personal beef. They had a little bit of an incident which Davis described in a club at one point, which when he described it just didn't really even sound like anything. Davis kept him waiting a long time at the first press conference, but it's just the kind of thing that you do. When they faced off at times, it's threatened to boil over, but hasn't quite happened. But I just really like all of that, because this is professional boxing. These are two, alphas, if you like, who both feel like they're the best. And
they're not forcing anything.
They're not forcing anything. There's no racing for the bottom here. There's no crude insults. There's just, I'm going to beat you. No, I'm going to beat you. And that's really the extent of it. But they are good personalities. And when you're trying to sell a fight, it always helps if you can try and paint them as being really, really different, because it gives people something to buy into. You'll buy into one more than the other, and then you pick a team, and that helps with sales, and it helps people really invest in it. And with something like this, with Garcia, inevitably, because he is good looking and he's got the endorsements and the Instagram followers, people will think, okay, well, we can have him as kind of more the establishment guy, more the corporate guy, more the kind of silver spoon guy. That's what we'll do with him. Gervonta Davis, we can have him as more of the spit and sawdust guy, tough background guy. You know, that's what we'll do. And that's what they've done. But when you look at the pair of them, they're not that different. They both turned pro really young. And they are both incredibly driven, and they understand the business, and they are. Garcia's going to put absolutely everything on the line there, but I do agree with Barry. I just think Davis is better, and I always have from the moment that the fight was made. But I really hope it does tremendously well numbers wise, because it's really what we need at the minute. And then Haney Loma a month later is kind of just as good for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, one of the recent quotes from Ryan Garcia on the I think it was again with Mike Tyson taking everybody's jobs, where he said to him that everybody was saying the same thing about Muhammad Ali when he was talking about fighting Sonny Liston, and he was going to do this. He's like, this is my moment. You're listening to it, and you're like being brought into it, and you're thinking, oh my god, he believes it. And then you hear from Davis, and you look at his knockouts and the form that he's in, and you kind of lean towards him. It's what makes it such a great fight. Barry, going to come to you with a question I ask you quite often with fights like this. You always talk about kind of the start of a fight, showing people what what you've got in those early exchanges, as it were. How do you see the opening stages of this playing out?
I think that's more important for Ryan Garcia. I think Davis is a slow starter, and if he starts too slow in this fight, then he might find himself in trouble. I think you want to take a bit of confidence away from Garcia, but I think it's more important for Garcia to start fast. I think because Davis has a bit better ring generalship than Garcia, I think that he'll be happy to, again, like I said, sit on the peripherals a little bit and wait for his chance. And he might try and just outweight Garcia, actually, but I think as long as he doesn't switch off, that'll work for him. And then he jumps into attacks, and he has fast hands, and also he's punching up, he's coming up, so he's lower, and he'll rattle with combinations. And I think if he forces Garcia to throw wildly, which I think Garcia will. I think if Garcia throws wildly, being the shorter fighter, a bit more compact, and punches through the middle, I think I think Garcia wins that exchange. I mean Davis wins that exchange, I think. So he'd be happy to wait, force Garcia to overcommit, and then come in, meet him, get in and meet him, close the distance quick. It's Garcia's who does step in. Garcia actually he adjusts the distance quite well when he attacks. But he's already got the guy in trouble when he does it, so he'll push you back with the jab and a good solid right hand. Whether you block it or not, it puts you in a defensive position straight away. And then he'll advance on you, take a little half step back, just in case you fire, then he comes on you again. I think that the angle's got to be different to come back with Davis, because I think Davis will jump on you and close the distance better and quicker. So I think the fast start needs to be... I think Davis needs to start faster than usual, but the fast start's more important for Garcia in this fight, definitely. They both know they got power, so I don't think I think their reputations already precede them, so they know. So I don't think they have to show it as much as maybe you'd have to against the opposition. But so they have to be aware. They'll both be aware of that. But it's who waits too long and who switches off first. It might be the problem. See, my worry about Davis is as much as I think he's going to win the fight, that he will switch off now and again. And he does. And if that happens, he might not get up. But ultimately, I think he doesn't.
It's one of those though.
Yeah.
There's so many different sides to the coin in this.
I don't think he does, and I think he. Yeah, I just think the speed. I know the speed that he has, Garcia, is frightening, very difficult to overcome. But I think he can close the distance with his feet, Davis. And I think once he gets inside, I think he's going to struggle. There's uppercuts and all. I know he can throw all the right. He'll be practicing on when he takes a step back and Garcia comes in. Davis, I keep getting the names wrong.
Because they're both so
and Davis comes in. And Garcia, we're working on an uppercut through the middle. But from the southpaw stance, it's going to be difficult for him. And I think also with Davis, when he attacks, he can sort of go that way. He can step, and give you almost like a feint on a football pitch. You go this way, go that way. He can almost do that. Boom. He got fast enough feet to get inside. And I think Garcia might struggle a little bit with that. It's one of those, isn't it? It's a great fight. I can't see. I know you should say fights. Whatever happens, I don't care who wins. Genuinely, don't care. I honestly don't. I think it's great for boxing. Whatever happens, and I think we could see it again. By the way, I think we will see it again. I think they'll earn so much money.
Yeah, you would think it does such good business.
Yeah, they'll want to do it again.
I mean, I can't really see a scenario where if it does great business, which I think everybody expects it to do, I can't really see what fight, unless it's just so dominant one way or the other, then maybe we don't see it again.
Yeah, even then I think we do. I mean, if one comes up with an excuse, it comes back and it goes again. I know in some way you're saying, but I think, I think Davis gets to him. And gets to him sort of late. I think it takes him a while, but I think it gets to him late. I think they both carry power late, but I think Davis is carry power late in fights where he haven't had all his own way. Where Garcia has probably never had it all his own way. I know he got dropped with a body shot by by Campbell. Sorry, but he jumped straight back up, and he was fine. Which is great, but to see, by the way, I mean, jumping straight back up is a stupid thing, but I mean, if he covered really well, it was a good shot, he recovered really well. Luke Campbell's not a big puncher, to be fair, but a southpaw as well, and I think that's telling. I think the looping shots as well, which if Davis gets low and whips that left hand over the top, arcs it over the top like that, I think that's the way Garcia steps back with his chin up because he doesn't bend his legs. That's a really worrying sign. But he does take two steps back as well, Garcia. If he takes a step, he takes 2 steps, he goes boom, boom. So that's where he gets him sometimes. He takes a step back, they commit, because they know, and they overcommit, so he's taking the step back, I'll jump at him, but he double steps, boom, boom, like that with 2 steps, and then you are in no man's land. You think, he stepped back, I know he's going to step back, but I'll jump at him, I know where he is. He takes that extra little half a step, and you're stuck. With a smaller fighter, that might be something that works for him, but I still think that his chin up in the air when he steps back, because he wants to be tall to get that lean back left hook that gets you. I think that might work against him against Davis.
Andy, going to come to you. It feels like Gervonta Davis has been around for forever, because I mean he burst onto the scene with that brilliant performance over Jose Pedraza to win the 130-pound title,
which is even better now.
It's got better. I mean, we've seen Pedraza up at 140 pounds. He's never been anywhere near as dominated as much as he was in that fight. We saw Gervonta Davis then come over here and put on a show against Liam Walsh. Do you feel like kind of feels like he's done super feather, he's done lightweight, he had a brief stint at 140 against Mario Barrios, but it feels like this is now the moment for Gervonta Davis to really, I mean, it sounds silly to say it because he's such a big attraction and he's achieved so much in that short space of time, but this feels like quite a significant moment in his career, people will talk about the weight and the rehydration and this and that, but the fact is Ryan Garcia, unbeaten, legitimate talent. This seems to be the one for Gervonta Davis to take that next step in his career. Yeah,
completely. And what's been good about the build-up too is he's happy to admit that he needs this. He said that. And I like that, because it would be really easy just to say, I didn't need this fight. I don't have to do this. I'm this, that and the other. He did say in an interview I saw with him, listen, what people need to understand is that where I'm from, I am already a legend. Where I'm from, in Baltimore, what I've achieved, where I started. But career-wise, boxing-wise, for the wider general sporting public, I do need this. I need a dance partner, was how he described it. And that's why this is happening, because they both got that attitude. And when you're as big a name as him and you do the kind of numbers that he does and you fill out arenas like he does, people inevitably, this is how the world works, isn't it? They'll look to pick holes. And people have always looked to pick holes. I was rewatching a few fights yesterday, and when he fought Rowley, he's people say, well, through 5 rounds, that's a close fight. He's maybe losing that fight, and you think, yeah, but he finished it in the 6th.
Yeah, and also by his design, by the way.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful finish. Just something like that could happen against Garcia, like the bigger guy. He gives the ground, sunk into the ropes, made him fall short, hit him with the left hand. I mean, that was just a sensational bit of boxing. And with the finishes, I looked through it yesterday. 12 championship fights, 11 inside the distance. He's only not had stoppages in rounds 4, 5, and 10. Every other round, he's had a stoppage in, and that's a real spread.
I'm betting on those rounds.
Yeah, most of the earlier ones came at super feather, and the later ones have come at lightweight. That one fight at super lightweight, but he knows that he's the attraction and the star that he is. But he knows that there is more that can be done, and I like the teams as well. Calvin Ford.
He's got a bit of everything.
They've got that kind of great bond. Those two, they've been together forever. But I really like Joe Goosen. Joe Goosen will be double deniming it in the corner at the weekend, and he knows boxing inside out. And they seem like a good team. Those two, they've not been together long, but they seem to have a good, good connection.
And Goosen's traditionally all about dominating. Yeah, you got to go out and dominate. So it's a career-defining fight for either one. That's what it is. And we all talk about Spence and Crawford being the Leonard Hearns of its day. This is stylistically nothing that's like that, but this is closer to that. Two fighters at their peaks fighting each other, age-wise as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
I think Leonard and Hearn were like 21, 23 or something like that. But I mean, this is
by modern standards. That's kind of the same thing. Like 28 and 25, isn't it?
It is. There's no arguments where no one's been. They've just gone a little step behind, or this is marinated too long. It hasn't. It's the right fight at the right time, and that's what makes it a career-defining fight. Davis has been brilliant, and he's done well with pay-per-view sales, and he's done well with arenas. But he's such a talent that I think his career's been underwhelming. I do. I think he could have been. I think he should be. But he needed this fight.
Yeah, he does.
He's been searching for this fight. Actually, to be fair to him, he never had someone like this for him to fight. Or maybe there was, but they weren't happening for whatever reasons, promotional ties, whatever. But he's got the fight that will change him forever. His standing in sports, and certainly in boxing, forever. Or he'll be viewed. He was always viewed as a great talent. No winnable title, but winnable titles in multiple weights now is we don't look at it the same allure as we would have many years ago, because it's done all the time now, and it's easier and it's more accessible, unfortunately. So the boxers don't always get the credit they deserve for it. But this is the fight. This is the fight that either one can lose by making half a mistake. And genuinely, not just I got caught, but I'll beat them next time. We see upsets. Either one loses, not upset. That's what makes it a great fight. Whoever wins and loses, it's not an upset. How it goes, even if either one gets knocked out in the first 10 seconds, it's not an upset. If either one loses by points or wins by points, it's not an upset. Either one gets a late stoppage and the referee steps in, it's not an upset. That makes it a great fight.
Just on Gervonta Davis, one of the things that we spoke about, Canelo is probably the obvious example of a fighter who has changed their styles throughout the years, kind of taken little bits and pieces. I feel like the same is true for Gervonta Davis. I feel like in the early stages of his career, he's blowing people out, natural athleticism. I don't know he's gone up the levels, but he's become more of a kind of patient, front foot, methodical, look for the big single. 2 questions really. First one on kind of the development of his style, is that for the betterment of him? And number 2, does he have to be wary about giving too many rounds away against Ryan Garcia?
Yeah, most definitely it does. And, I think that'll be the criticism of him, is that the fact that he does let boxers win rounds. I say lets you. He doesn't quite let them, but he sort of does, because he can do more. But he also realises, like Mayweather, who was his mentor for a long time, that when you move up in weight and you box people naturally bigger than you, then you have to adapt your style a little bit more. That being just physical strength. Of Mayweather was never like that, but he adapted slightly to be more cautious of the weight and the strength. That he couldn't be the bull. Like, he wasn't the same intimidating figure as a super featherweight. He was he might only be 5'5", but he was 5'5" wide. That's what he looked like as a super feather. So you'd be like, this is just a monster coming at me. But then when you're boxing like Barrios, who was 6 foot at super lightweight, he doesn't have the same intimidation factor. His reputation precedes him, so that helps. But I mean, you have to be more smart to be an attack. So you wait for the guy to make a mistake, and believe that you have the ability and the power to still hurt anyone, which he does. He has fast hands. He picks his shots really well. He can jump in and out of attacks. I think his exit routes are really good as well at times. So that gets him. That makes him he's not known for this, but quite an elusive target to hit at times.
Davis,
yeah, massively. Yeah. So, but also every now and again he switches off and forgets that he's boxing guys with massive reach. It gets caught with silly shots now and again. So he's had to adapt, and I think it's been fantastic for him. I think that's what makes him, in my eyes, the favourite. That he has more to his game, and he's shown it. And Garcia might have more to his game, but he just hasn't. We haven't seen it yet because he hasn't had to produce it. And this is the fight where he's going to have to maybe show more than just power. And speed, because that's what he has. But that's all we've seen. That's all he's got. He's loads of power and really fast hands.
Apart from that, he's got nothing.
And he can get off the floor to win.
Well, now that's the thing for me. That knockdown against Campbell, as you say, not a supersonic puncher, but a respectable puncher. Watching it again yesterday, I'd forgotten how heavy he went down.
And he's up at 2.
And he's up immediately. Because when you watch it in slow motion as he goes down, a fighter, when they go down, when they've got their wits completely about them, they'll just turn their hip or put out their hand, break their fall. They know it's happening as it's happening. And he kind of half had an arm out, but he goes down hard, and you look at his eyes, and they're a little bit glassy, and then he's straight back up. And I just feel like
it probably looked worse because he just bent his legs.
Yeah. He's like a tree. He's like a tree falling almost. Though it was, and I just feel like Davis, as described, is now a patient guy, and he's looking to set things up. He's looking for anything he can see early in the fight, but he's always looking to win inside the distance because that's what he does. And he's confident he can do it, whether it comes early, whether it comes middle, whether it comes late. When the opportunity presents itself or he sets it up, he'll be able to take it. But we could have a scenario maybe where he goes about it the way he has done. He does drop some rounds. He is behind. He locks on. He puts Garcia down and he bounces back up. Yeah. And then the final few rounds, all bets are off and we've got chaos and carnage. That's what I want to see.
And it's one of the things that you said there about the Rolly Romero fight. I felt like if somebody had said to him, look, here, Gervonta, here's $10 million if you get it done a couple of rounds earlier, I think he probably would have gone about it a bit different. But Romero's making a lot of mistakes, very physically imposing, big guy for the weight.
Massive, absolutely
But you could just sort of see Davis. I think he sort of started turning it up in the 5th, but you could just sort of see him just having a look and going, oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, there it is. And then in the 6th round, he catches him with the left hand. You mentioned there about the exits. He's straight out and he's ready to follow up if Romero doesn't go down, which of course he does. And that just shows the intelligence of him that he's developed over the period of time where he's been boxing, where he's not just a puncher. He's not just somebody who goes out there and blows people away like he used to. He used to get people out there in a round or two, and you're always in a position with punchers like that where you want to see a bit more. And he's kind of gone, not the other way, because he's still a big puncher, but he's gone to that more methodical... Yeah.
He's still absolutely looking to win by stoppage. Yeah. It's just he's not going to be gung-ho and too gung-ho. And as you get through those levels and go up in size, I guess, no matter how good you are, one thing you probably realise is that you can't just step into the middle of the ring unloading punches at that level of boxing, because it'll work against some people, but you'll come up against someone who will slaughter you if you do that.
Let's not forget... Garcia's not going to look. Garcia's not looking to win on points.
No, exactly.
He's coming right out to knock him out. So we are sort of talking like, you'll lose too many rounds. Garcia will give too many rounds away, and then you got to try and claw it back. I think Garcia is going to force him to fight. I think the onus in the end would be on Garcia. Garcia will be looking for the stoppage from first bell, because that's what he does, by the way. And he'll bank on his power. And you think, my speed and how short you are and the mistakes you make now and again, I've seen it, and the wrongs you give away, when you're being lazy, I'm going to jump on you and force you to work hard and force you to make a mistake. That might be his mind, especially with Joe Goose in the corner. He's going to go, put it on him, son.
Oh yeah,
put it right on him now.
Yeah.
But also take a little step back and put it back on him again, and so maintain that. You can be an aggressive bully and maintain the distance. You have to. You rather than walk up, you walk behind the punches. So he's going to force Davis to fight, and maybe that might be a route in. Davis is so used to dictating the pace, even when he's on the peripherals, when he's moving around, that if Garcia can force Davis to work at a higher pace, then he struggles.
One of the things that Gervonta Davis has, I guess one of the criticisms that he's levelled at Ryan Garcia is that he's not a complete fighter. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because he hasn't shown it yet. No, he can't fight inside, I don't think, and he hasn't been put under severe pressure to have to adapt yet. So there's a lot of unknowns about him. I would say that much. But just because you don't have the movement from the waist. I keep saying the same thing. The guy doesn't bend his legs. It's mad. You could just put him on wheels. Really, put it out there. But so we haven't seen what he's like when these things have. He's not going to roll under the target like Gervonta does, because he's not a sort of fighter. It doesn't mean he's not as good as he's going to get. He doesn't need to do all those things. He doesn't need to be able to fight inside. If he can hold and pull you back, doesn't need to be able to fight inside. You should learn to fight inside. If you're not an inside fighter, just enough for you to stop them working. I couldn't fight inside, but I could fight enough inside to negate you from working away inside, so I could get away. That's learn how to fight inside. Some more aggressive fighters learn to fight inside to wear you down and beat you up, and Davis can do that, and Garcia probably can't. He can throw a great body shot, as we know. But he doesn't need to get close. Him fighting close, it doesn't help him. If he's inside this distance, that's no good for Garcia. Except for him throwing uppercuts, catching you coming in. He doesn't want you anywhere closer than that. So he doesn't need to. No, what he needs to be able to do is when you get inside there, if he doesn't hit you with an uppercut, or he can't lean back and throw a hook, is to get close to you and tie you up. Yeah, that's what he needs to be able to do. Learn that. So to be a complete fighter, you want to be that, but you don't always need to know everything. You just need to make sure what you do good is better than what he does, can stop him from doing what he does good. If you can do that,
what do we think about the weight and the rehydration clause? Because when you look at Garcia, he was 140 in his last fight, 138 against Targo. He won't have made 136 as it is for quite a while. Last
fight he had down there would have been the Campbell fight. Yeah, that at 135.
Yeah, because he's been inactive, hasn't he? Because of COVID, but also because of the mental health issues he needed to address. He hasn't boxed that much over the last 3 years, so that's quite a long time since he's had to trim down to that kind of weight.
He looked in pretty good nick. He spoke about, he kind of alluded to the fact, look, Gervonta Davis is not a small lightweight. So no. He doesn't have but he's very stocky, and we've seen him earlier in his career, and it looks as though he's kind of addressed his fluctuating weight in between camps.
That looked like it'd be a problem, didn't it?
Yeah,
it was good to
at
see
one point there was
control. But the difference is, like you just said, pretty much with Davis, that's about how he lives his life.
Yeah.
With Garcia, it's just physical size.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. But again, like, isn't it for everyone? That's
yeah. It's not like he's grabbing. He's not like he's dragging a career 140 down to 136. I mean, somebody who has made the weight, but again, it's as you've said there, Barry, kind of getting to that stage now of Garcia where he's hitting his mid-20s. His natural size, he's naturally outgrowing it. It's not self-inflicted like some fighters in between camps, and it's not a case of bringing it down there. What do you think about the weight, Barry? Obviously, you're the resident ex-fighter. Do you feel like it favours one or the other, or?
Oh, sounds like a dig that to me. You're the resident ex-fighter. You did a couple of rounds, didn't you?
Okay, you're the resident ex-world champion.
Yeah, remember, you sparred a couple of good people in your day, remember? I'm sure I've seen you carry someone's bag once. Yeah, well, being the apprentice journalist, I can't even get the words out to insult him. Weight is always a big issue, and you can just say, the weight's the weight. Don't take the fight. But then we wouldn't have the fight, would we? So he's had to accommodate Davis. I understand that, but I don't want to focus on that. I don't want the weight to be an issue. I don't want the weight to focus in.
Nah, no, mate.
I don't want the fight to be. I don't want if Davis to win and Garcia to say, well, if I couldn't have made the weight, if it would have been a super lightweight, I would have beat him, and which might be the case, but I don't want to even focus anything negative about.
Sure, no, it is part of the.
Of course, it's part of it.
Yeah, part of the story, though.
It's the rehydration. The making the weight is a struggle for everyone, and it'll be really hard. But it's how he makes the weight, because you can make other fighters. Matt probably had this much more than I did. Matt Macklin for Macklin's take, but making the weight, you can make the weight one fight, and the other fight you're the same size, and you've just almost, it's been life and death to make the weight, because you just left it a couple of days longer or a week longer. You ate the wrong thing, you didn't train right, the runs weren't the same, different things, different climates, and all the rest of it. So that can be an issue. So you got to be more disciplined to make the weight, I would feel. But it's the rehydration clause is going to be the biggest issue. That's the biggest factor.
I'm not sure what the rehydration clause is.
It's half a pound I would have if I was Davis.
I'm not sure.
Can't put on an
10,
ounce.
I think. I read that it was 10.
Has that been officially confirmed then?
That was yesterday, looking through everything, I found that a number of times that it was 10, £136 and £10.
And also another
that's going to be hard for Garcia.
With the weight, I guess the thing that I wonder is that because he hasn't had to make 135, say 136 for quite a long time, and because he's always kind of looked quite boyish in his physique, and now he looks more like a man, whether actually doing it now, we just got to assume that he's going to be super professional and do everything right, but that even doing that, he's still going to find, because he won't know until he actually has to do it, because he hasn't done it for a while, he'll find actually, shit, like this is taking something off me, and I really hope not.
It is £10.
It's possible.
It is £10.
And I think, and that's the issue, because by the way, you want to rehydrate massively fully, but I think it's how you do it. Like I've seen fighters, this is back in the day when no one knew anything about nutrition, make the weight, even when they first started doing the weigh-in the day before, make the weight, and then eat so much food. They sat in the toilet on Saturday, the day of the fight, just like because your body,
you got to be very
your stomach
careful.
shrinks. You what you put in your body, and they'll know what that to cause them.
Yeah.
And like other fighters with loads of money used to have a drip, didn't they?
Yeah.
And fluids go straight into their body, and but yeah, it's how he rehydrates, because that £10 for him is not going to be enough. He's got to watch his weight again. I find it a worrying issue, that rehydration thing there. I don't think
it's an extra layer of stress.
We had George Groves on the pod a while back, and we spoke about
from the George Groves Boxing Club podcast.
They actually did a really good one on this with a guy talking about making weight and rehydration a couple of weeks ago. And I listened to it, and it was about all of that. When you get off the scales, it's kind of, you want to eat these many grams, and then that many grams corresponds to this much water. And
crazy,
he said exactly what you said.
We go to McDonald's. Actually, it wasn't McDonald's.
Yeah,
McDonald's in the UK then.
Bottle of water and go to Nando's.
It's changed. I mean, you remember Ricky Hatton used to have a full English breakfast like the day after. Like, it's completely changed now.
Yeah.
Like S&C coaches and dietitians will say,
they've ruined the sport.
Basically don't have stuff like when you're rehydrating that you've not been having for the last 2.5 months.
You have shits, won't you?
Yeah, because people will
easily digestible stuff.
I found that when I had a packet of biscuits there once.
One of the interesting things that George said on the pod is about kind of rehydration clauses and things like that. And what time is it the next day? I think it's interesting. Sometimes the rehydration, the second weigh-in isn't first thing in the morning. If it's first thing in the morning, you make it, and then you can kind of carry on sort of steadily taking fluid in.
11 o'clock.
I think if it's earlier than that, usually, I remember, I think Shane
the IBF do it at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was talking about with Lucian Bute and Carl Froch, and he said that Carl Froch walked down, no problem. He had his tracksuit on, jumped on, he was well inside the rehydration. And he said that, I can't remember who, I think he might have had Frampton on the undercard. And he said that
he was. Yeah.
Lucian Bute had come in and he was, and he's having to make the rehydration. He was very tight at it. But you can continue to kind of gradually, as the day goes by, fill yourself with stuff. So I'd imagine that Garcia will still be significantly heavier than £10 or 146 when he eventually makes it into the ring.
Yeah, if they do it like the IBF, and you would imagine that's what you would want if you were Team Garcia. They've got to have some kind of say over some of this, surely. If you agree to the clause, and you've got to, if you're them, you're going to be thinking, well, at least let me do it at 8 o'clock in the morning, because then you've got like 14 hours before you're fighting, probably, haven't you?
Barry, what's it like when you're, I mean, because the other way of doing it, let's kind of disregard it in this instance, but without a rehydration clause, fighters can go the other way. They put so much on that they're in there, they're sluggish, the feet are heavy, they don't have the snap in their shots. It's a real art, that kind of putting it back in. It's not just about making the weight.
But a lot of it is how you make the weight initially, because, again, if you've struggled, if you've have to make the weight quick. If you're taking off too much weight just before the fight, we all take off, they do that water load and everything that when I was boxing. But I mean, you take too much weight off quickly towards the fight, then whatever you put too much fluids back in your body and whatever, then you are lethargic. You can feel that, you feel it in there. So it is important. It wasn't so much what we put in our body back then, which of course it was, but we didn't know that. It was eating too much too soon. And going in and feeling bloated and all that sort of stuff. That was the worry as well, by the way. But it's a science now, isn't it, to get it right. And I do think it's all about making the weight right before, even if it's a struggle. And then the rehydration thing should be a lot simpler if you've made the weight a bit more sensibly if you cut down. So the week of the fight, you want to be closest to the weight than you would have been. You learn from experience how you felt that fight. So the fighters should have a diary. That's the truth of it. They probably do nowadays.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
We never did, but we never did back then. But my old man used to say back then, back in the early 90s, about you should have a diary, how you felt that day, when you run, how you did, and how you felt. We won the way. It's about trying to replicate that, like the whole fight, so you get the perfect camp. There's no camps back in that. Get the perfect run up to a fight just by doing that. He's seen a documentary about some American football player who they had him from a kid, and he played for some team, I don't know, some quarterback. But they literally documented his whole life, which sounds absolutely cruel, actually. But I mean, it was but document his whole life, which means he could get out. I felt that day. Get a diaries out and try and replicate that feeling again. And I think weight can be quite a lot like that. You got to try and I felt good in that fight because I made the weight and did this right, and trying to kind of get that right. But I do think it's how you make the weight, because that rehydration is almost irrelevant. If you'd rather you're literally skipping and getting rid of like half a stone like the day before a fight, which is not unheard of, by the way.
No, I mean, yeah,
on the day of the fight,
can be done.
Then you're risking you being not at your sharpest.
Yeah.
As well as being like weak and all that, because of making weight takes a lot out of you. And that's but making weight is part of a fighter, because that is part of it's part of a tactic in a fight, I would say, because you're losing energy because you are making weight. So you're never going into a fight 100% as you would in a training camp. In the training camp, there's a certain point in your training camp where you're at your physical peak because you haven't cut the weight yet. You're as fit as you can be, so you're at your best. But as a fight time, you want to be at your very best. You've cut loads of weight. You're boxing at the weight, not me, because I just moved up 2 weights. But I mean, you're boxing at the weight that's not your natural walk around weight. So you're not going to be as big as a sharp. So by round 6, you are going to be more tired than you would have been in a maybe a spar. I mean, if you did a 12-round spar or whatever, you might, and you walk. Say you haven't to weigh 10 stone, but you're sparring at 10.5 stone. You've cut loads of weight, but you're still feeling physically strong and fit and sharp, and you might feel better there than you did on the fight night. And
but you want to, as I understand it, you want to, like you say, you've got with a fight like this and with guys like this, I think we've just got to kind of assume that he's going to do it right.
Yeah.
But you want to be fighting at the weight that you were sparring at towards the final stages. So
weight,
yeah.
Josh Taylor said it really well. I remember when he boxed Regis Prograis, like the start of, I think it was the start of the year, it was like February, March time. I think he had his wisdom teeth taken out. It might have been slightly later than that, because he boxed in October. He had his wisdom teeth taken out, and he said he couldn't eat anything for like 2 weeks. He was on liquid only. He said when he came into camp, he was like, much further along than when he would be when it came to cutting weight. He said so he was on his fighting weight for weeks and weeks beforehand. So where he was sparring is what he would eventually be in the ring at. Once you can get to that point, you know that you're strong.
Yeah.
You take the weight off, and then you get back to where you've been operating at for the in his instance, the lion's share of the camp was at a certain weight, and then he went into the ring at that weight.
Exactly. If you do it nice and gradually,
your body knows
early-ish. Your body knows. Whereas if you do that massive yo-yo where you're having to lose 20 pounds between your final spar and your weigh-in, and then you try and feel like you should bounce back up to that because that's what you sparred at, the trauma on your body for that is absurd. I remember Jamie Moore's great on this, because he had a fight towards the end where he lost 20 pounds in 20 hours to make the weight, and just think about that. Like, what's going on inside there, like in your body? What's it saying to itself? It's just like, what the fuck is happening here?
And then you're fighting off instinct then.
Yeah.
And just literally will to win sort of thing. That's why the problem with, like, especially diuretics and what people take an end to make weight is that they don't help you with your performance as such. But what they do in round 10, when the one fighter's depleted energy because he's made the weight right and he's struggling, you haven't. So you're theoretically fitter.
Yeah.
And that's why people get hurt. So it's hard to get it right. And one little thing, one tiny little stupid mistake could just unravel it all while making weight.
Or just one tiny little bit of bad luck where you get say you get a little foot injury and you can't run for a week.
Running for a week is I don't know, they've run different now, but running for a week, when I was boxing, like, it's almost like you can't fight.
Yeah, I remember
you could not spar. I'd rather not spar than not be able to run. I know that sounds crazy. I didn't spar for my last fight. I got beat though. Shit. Fuck. Oh yeah. Shit.
I remember Scott Quigg when he boxed Oscar Valdez, missed the weight, and everybody kills you when you miss the weight. Oh, it's it's the primary obligation for professional fight. And that's all true.
Yeah,
but
it is. Yeah.
After the fight, he said, "Look, what happened was I had a foot injury and I couldn't run, and it just that was why it happened."
Yeah,
and that's a perfectly reasonable explanation.
It's a reasonable explanation, but it's not good enough.
No, well, no, and that's
unfortunately,
the problem,
it's not.
It's a reason, but it's not an excuse.
And people would say pull out the fight, but then pull out the fight you can't afford to. And also, imagine that happened with one of these. You pull out the fight, you go, so the boxing's in the shit gutted again and all that sort of stuff. But we spent more time talking about the weight than the fight.
It's just a really interesting subject, though, weight making and all of it. And it's always seemed to me that when it comes to camps and preparation and all that kind of thing, at an elite level in sport, in any sport, all you can do is prepare as best you can, and that keeps doubts under control. It keeps self-doubt under control. It doesn't mean it will guarantee a win, but if you can prepare as best you can, you get in there, do your best, and whatever happens, happens.
Your best on that night. I would say you want to be your very best of all time every time you fight. It's impossible. I always say you go do your best on that night. That's what I've never been like. Even when I lost my fight, I was never ashamed of my losing. I was gutted. I did the best I could do for that. I think I could have boxed better, but on that night I couldn't have done any better. So you end up going, there you go.
And if you've prepared properly, you don't go in there feeling like I should have done this and I should have done that. It's like you're kind of at peace with yourself that you've done what you needed to do. That's over now. You get in there and
I tell you what, the cheating on weight and training and all the rest of it, that's the night before. When you go to bed the night before the fight and your mind's spinning about all the great things but also all the bad things,
that's what I mean.
They all seep into your head.
That's what I mean. If you've done it all right, then those doubts, that devil on your shoulder, that's not there.
And we've all done it. I mean, unless you go away to an actual genuine camp and people waking you up in the morning, we've all done it where we didn't run when we should have. That creeps back in. But you have to just boast again. You lie to yourself, but I didn't do it. But I did them ones instead. But I mean, all the little things you didn't do, you could have done extra. That all creeps into your mind, and that's the mental part of boxing where you almost got to push that out and just go no. Yeah, I'm ready.
So hopefully with these two, they both genuinely have had really good camps.
I'd imagine
and everything's gone according to plan.
You mentioned there is weight making nowadays is science, and right down to everything now is monitored. Sleep quality. It's not even how many hours of sleep did you get, what quality of sleep did you get. You see Chris Billum-Smith. We kind of spent a day in the life with him, and he has like these blockers and things like that. All sorts of stuff. So anything, and it always comes down to that point where you're just looking for that even tiniest little % of a % to make the difference in fights like this. But anyway, enough of talking about the weight because I'm fat and it makes me conscious.
We're doing it. We said
Haney Lomachenko. We said Haney Lomachenko in a month's time is for the glory. So where does the winner of this sit in the let's say lightweight division? That's 136 pound division. Where does the winner of this stand among your Shakur Stevensons, Haney, Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez? He's up at 140, but where do they sit, Andy?
God, it's such a good division, isn't it? I've always felt like Garcia was more at the fringe of that conversation, although in it, whilst Davis has always been right in it. I would still put him right up there towards the top if he wins, and if he doesn't, then Garcia transplants him and takes his place. It's hard to kind of. I would always find it difficult to back against Davis because I just think he's as you said, it feels like he's been around forever. He's that kind of seasoned, and the ability level is where it is, and I think the mentality and the will to win and all that other stuff, I think everything is really elite there with him. So I would struggle to pick against him against anybody. I wouldn't say the same about Garcia, but then if he beats Davis, I have to, because he's just beaten someone who I'm putting on that kind of pedestal.
Barry?
I think if Garcia wins, then we don't talk about him as a lightweight ever again. He's not a lightweight. He won't ever make lightweight. This is it now. I don't think he does it again. I don't feel. I hope I'm wrong, but I think he's a light welter, super lightweight. And then we talk about him against Lopez and Taylor and Haney if Haney moves up. I think the winner of Haney and Lomachenko makes them number one. Though I do think Davis will beat them both.
No, that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
It's not an exact science anyway.
No,
it's not a trial.
No, but that's how I approach rankings. I think you have to put number one, whoever wins out of Haney and Lomachenko. You have to, or I know some people don't like the belts and Binder belts and all the rest of it, but if you are going to pay attention to that, the undisputed champion has to be number one. But that doesn't mean that you don't think someone else might beat them.
I still think, as it stands now, it may change after the next month or so. For me, the fight for supremacy, I think, at lightweight is between Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson, for me.
Yeah, Stevenson now.
That's the one that I think.
Stevenson,
I think he could go to 140 as well. You mentioned about Haney and everybody.
He will be. I think Stevenson's the future of everything. Yeah. I've said that time again, but I think right now, where he's only come into the division, you have to put him below them.
You do.
I mean, we're talking about again, it's like pound for pound, isn't it? You're talking about resumes, potential,
who beats who,
all that crap. So it's hard to really form it, but I think Stevenson, when he's at his peak, which he's not yet, will be, if I think the way he goes, will be virtually unbeatable. Stevenson, possibly. Now people go, he haven't got the raw power, maybe, but no, they Floyd Mayweather. Actually, they got enough power. Didn't have the raw power to make you fall asleep instantly. But look how good he was, and I think Stevenson's the closest to that. So I think he might. The thing about Lomachenko is as brilliant as he is, he's at the wrong stage of his life, and he's in the wrong weight naturally. We say that about Gervonta Davis because he's so short, but I think he's a bigger unit, But Lomachenko, gives Davis kittens, by the way. But I just think that tenacity, strength, speed in the end, and the weight will be a factor if they fought. But I think the winner, Lomachenko-Haney, has to be number one, and then Davis, if it beats Garcia, has to be number two, and then you're talking about Lomachenko probably still gets in at number three. Garcia's a lightweight, a super lightweight. He never comes back to lightweight again, I don't think, and everyone's got to move up to fight him if they want to chase him. If he wins, and they'll all be chasing him, which
he'll be able to call the shots,
which won't be a problem for Haney, by the way. It won't be a problem for Stevenson in another 18 months, which I think. Cause I don't think Garcia goes too much further than super lightweight. I think he'd probably go to welterweight, but I think he would be chasing a fight at welterweight. I think he could make super lightweight for a little while. It would be hard, but I think he could do it.
It's interesting. I think he probably does 154 eventually. I think because he's big. He's got the frame, isn't he?
He's tall.
It's one of the things that Campbell and everybody said about when they boxed him. I mean, it's going back a couple of years now. It's still at lightweight. Was that he'd kind of made this plan that he wanted to, at the time he wanted to fight Manny Pacquiao and he wanted to fight Gervonta Davis, but he still saw himself going through the weight. Same as Shakur Stevenson. They're both kind of.
But you see him. You see the super lightweights, super welters, light middle. Can I just say the old weights?
You do what you want.
You see the light middleweights and super welterweights. See the size they are.
The thing is, it might end up being kind of what we had with Mayweather, where he boxes at 154 against welterweights who have moved up, or 140 like Cotto and people.
Looking at Garcia now, I kind of feel like he's pretty much there when it comes to filling out his frame, because he did for a while look like someone who. He did look quite boyish, and that wasn't just his face, because he is just this fresh face, really good looking kid, but his body as well. Whereas you look at him now, and I feel like he's almost there. So I'm with you. I think he probably can hold 140 for a good while, and if he goes up, it'll be because he kind of has to, because there's a really big fight.
And Lomachenko can't move any further than he is. No, I mean, he might very well do. If he beats Haney, he might just keep going. I just keep going to keep going.
And Davis is 28. I mean, is he ever really going to be a full blown super lightweight? I don't think so.
Again, it might be a case of if the right fight's there. But if he wins, if he knocks out Ryan Garcia, he'll think, okay, well, if you're at 140, Devin Haney, you're going to have to meet me at 136 because I bring the money. Yeah, you got the belts, but I bring the money and I bring this. And with
that crew of fighters, in that case, I really don't care about the belts. Just get it done. If it needs to be 137, whatever, just get it done.
This is a good example.
Is this for a belt?
No.
I generally don't care anyway.
That's the perfect example of it.
Exactly.
Right. We've got 5 minutes until we're going to lose Mr. Jones. So let's talk about one of the fighters on the undercard.
3 minutes.
One of the fighters.
I haven't even looked at the undercard.
So David Morrell
Oh, of course, yeah, he's a WBA regular, isn't it?
No, everyone they whispered his name,
David Morrell. Now, we've spoken about kind of 168 pounds and the landscape, I guess, not post-Canelo in a sense of Canelo's necessarily going anywhere, but it's not, I guess it's probably take him out of the equation. It's quite a wide open division, Barry.
It is, but who wants to fight David Morrell?
Maybe David Benavidez.
Yeah.
Both at PBC. That's fight been spoken about for a little while.
And it's sort of a good clash of styles really because you've got a guy who's both aggressive, one's slippery southpaw as well, by the way, in the words of what's his name, your mate from Sky, Johnny Nelson. Remember that big thing about he's not a good southpaw. He's good, but he's just not slippery. Yeah. He's aggressive, but he's slick as well, Morrell. And I don't think he's a punch, but he's not a massive puncher. We're talking about Benavidez here, am I? similar aggressive. The punch, not a huge puncher, but a big puncher, aggressive. It's a good fight, that is. Benavidez with the size, though, I think might be a factor. But Morrell's good, and I think he walks right through Falcao. Falcao, is that you pronounce it?
Yamaguchi Falcao, yeah.
I think he walks right through him.
Not a squeever Falcao.
No, there's two, wasn't there?
Yeah.
This
boxing for vacant title, isn't he?
Yeah, I think
middleweight, yeah.
Yeah.
This beat Anthony Agogo in the Olympics, didn't he?
Yeah, this was the bronze medalist, didn't he? The brothers of silver. Is that right?
Which one, Andy? Resident amateur.
This one's the bronze medalist now. Who's boxing?
Yeah.
Morrell,
so,
I think. Yeah.
Esquiva Falcao is the guy who beat Agogo. Agogo got
he's still undefeated, isn't he?
Silver, yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, fan of David Morrell?
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty to like about him, and he has emerged as a little bit of a dark horse over the last 2 or 3 years, I guess, and the kind of guy who you looked at him and you felt like he might struggle to get fights because why would you really want to fight him? And this is a WBA regular title and people will have their own views on that. But ultimately, I do feel like I'm the same as you. I'm kind of looking at the super middleweight division sort of post-Canelo. Because I do wonder how much longer he'll go on for. And I don't know why it kind of feels like that, but it for me it does just sort of feel like that.
Sort of like
he's just going to pick his fight. He's just going to pick his fights now, isn't he?
Maybe
he might fights.
Yeah, you might end up boxing Bivol again at 172 or who knows.
And he'll always have a WBC title as long as he got a hold of his ass. It's true, isn't it? That's the truth of it. They'll always have a home there for him. So this is a great fight to Canelo, but there's a new breed coming through, but it's still unsettled. Yeah, there's no one's stamped their claim. Yeah, Morrell's a real in a short spot. He had 9 fights, 10 fights now.
Morrell has had I think 10 fights. He had the 8 fights. He had
bad,
the Yerba Sinelli fight last time, which was on I think the same night as Bivol versus Zurdo Ramirez. It was the same night or the day after. We were in Mexico at the time. It was the same. Anyway, so he had that fight, which is of course a really brutal fight and really brutal watch. Right, we're about to lose Barry Jones. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do our Davis Garcia predictions before we talk about the big show in Poland this week. Andy, Barry, going to come to you first. Your Davis Garcia prediction.
I think it's thoughtful in the first round and a half. I think then Garcia commits himself, puts it on Davis. It becomes a fantastic affair. But I think Davis finds a way and finds the shot. Maybe get up off the floor to do it. What was that? And wins around 10 to 11. Oh, look at that.
Andy Clark.
So I'm going to be unusually specific about what's going to happen here.
Okay, here we go.
So Davis will make a little bit of a slow start. Garcia will look to put it on him. After 7 rounds, Garcia will be up, let's say 5-2. Then in the 8th round, Davis is going to put him down, which is going to level things up pretty much. And then we're going to have carnage and chaos for 4 rounds at the end. And they'll both be barely on their feet swinging at the final bell. And who the fuck knows who gets it?
We have to have the completion. We have to have who's going to win, Andy?
I'll say Davis because for the reasons outlined, I'll say Davis.
Okay, so I think the fight is I think it'll be a very watchful start, and I think it's going to be a watchful start from both men. I don't think Ryan Garcia is going to come out and throw the kitchen sink early, and I think that it will start to catch fire in the middle rounds. Garcia will hurt Davis, but then Davis will take him out around 9-10. But I think they're both going to be quite respectful.
I think similar to mine, but I think
Garcia will be a little
bit earlier.
Yeah.
I've just got this thing in my head from and it kind of popped into it yesterday that Garcia is going to get knocked down, but he's going to bounce back up and look at him as if to say, "Is that it?"
Okay, well, that's all we have time for the Davis Garcia segment of the ID Boxing podcast. Thank you to everybody for watching. We'll be back very shortly with our Bakole, Hulk, and Babic Rozanski preview.
Big up Billy Nelson.
Big up Billy Nelson. Never. From me, Rob Terra, Barry Jones, and Andy Clark. We'll catch up with you in a short while. So we're back, Andy. We're now a twosome after Barry Jones has left the building. We're going to talk about this weekend in Poland for the return of Martin Bakole on the undercard of an Alen Babic world title fight. He boxes Lukasz Rozanski for the WBC bridgerweight title. Alen Babic to become a world champion in 2023 wasn't necessarily part of my predictions for the year, but here we are. And I'm expecting
I tipped him and Eubank.
Did you? Oh, no, yeah. He tips Eubank every year.
I didn't do it this year.
This is Andy's equivalent of like New Year, New Me, but same me every year for Eubank. But anyway, yes. Alen Babic versus Lukasz Rozanski. Babic is kind of, in the most respectful way possible, has been kind of sort of marketed a bit as the savage, a gimmick, and what have you. But he's always great value. I kind of have this conversation with people a lot where it's being a boxing purist and we all love the sport and this, but sometimes watching a crazy Croatian fella throw a load of punches is actually pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I've always been all for Babic, all for fighters of that ilk. It doesn't. I always find it strange when people look at someone and, he's not really a genuine heavyweight, he should be boxing at cruiserweight, but he's decided he's fighting a heavyweight and it's up to him. You don't get to decide, he does. Well, he can never beat Filip Hrgovic. Well, you might think that, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a place for him in the sport. And he is entertaining, he's good fun to be around, he is bang up for it, always, and his fights are good to watch. So what could possibly be wrong with that? And people will have their own thoughts on bridgerweight. Mine are that it's unnecessary. We don't need it. Nobody else has taken it up in terms of the other sanctioning bodies. But this is a good match. It's a fun fight. Sometimes we talk about fights as being fun fights, and that's easy to say when you don't actually have to do any fighting. But this is definitely in that bracket. Definitely in that bracket, because I've got no real idea what's going to happen, and I'm commentating on this fight at the weekend, and I love that when I don't really have any idea, because I still don't really know how good Babic is. He went 10 in his last fight, but prior to that, he'd never really gone close to going the distance. I don't think he'd been scheduled for 10 before that, actually. Rozanski hasn't been deeper than 4. Beat Artur Spilka in a round in his previous fight. But again, there's not an awful lot to go on there. I think one thing we can be absolutely sure of is that these two aren't going to get in there and fiddle around. That is not going to happen.
Yeah, not expecting Alen Babic to put on a masterclass of outside fighting. But what he is good at is very entertaining. He comes forward, he lets the big shots go. Just looking through Rozanski's record now, he boxed Izu Agunu, who is maybe familiar to people, Polish heavyweight, originally from Nigeria. Had that brilliant fight a few years back, do you remember, with Dominic Brazil? Yeah. And they were just knocking each other over every 30 odd seconds. A brilliant fight. That was amazing. So, I mean, that's some sort of pedigree. That's certainly a bigger win than anything that Babic has, as is Spilka. But obviously Spilka kind of more towards the end of his career now than Izu Agunu would have been back then. Just on bridgerweight, because we've been, I think, a couple of years now into the whole bridgerweight experiment, let's call it what it is, and you mentioned there that the WBA, WBO, IBF have not taken up the invitation, as it were, from the WBC, or certainly followed the WBC's lead with regards to making the bridgerweight division. This was something that Mauricio Suleiman, president of the WBC, had said that he expected to happen, and it obviously hasn't. Yeah, I mean, you've touched upon it there about not necessarily needing it. For me, I felt like if you were going to put an extra weight class in, because everyone loves an extra weight, it probably would have been good to do a 185-pound division, which is kind of the bridge that I felt needed.
Yeah, I totally agree, because that leap from light heavy to heavyweight is massive. I mean, it used to be 190, didn't it, the limit, and then they changed that in the late 90s, somewhere like that, and it just means that cruiserweight division is a big sprawling old division, and I think to cut that in half would be the better thing to do, because I can understand why every now and again, and this happens in other sports as well, like in golf, for example, somebody will come along and win a tournament hitting the ball a really long way, and everybody will panic and say we need to change the design of the courses, they're going to dominate forever, and then it doesn't happen. And in boxing, you'll have a little bit of an era where fighters who weigh 18, 19, 20 stone seem to be dominating, and people will think, oh, well, that's the way it's going. People have got no chance down at the opposite end of the scale. Usyk comes along and just disproves it all. Wilder he was at his heaviest in that third fight against Fury, but generally speaking,
he's 215-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Well inside the bridgerweight limit.
Exactly. So it's just not true that you have to be absolutely massive to make an impact at a heavyweight. So, yeah, I've never felt like bridgerweight was really called for, but if it can deliver some entertaining fights, then fine, because that's what we're in this for, is to watch. If it kind of manufactures good matches, is what I'm saying, I guess, then okay.
Yeah, we heard much about it, really. People have even spoke about the potential for Wilder doing it, dropping down, or kind of he doesn't need to drop down, because generally speaking, he's under the limit anyway. But boxing at bridgerweight, I feel like it might need a big name to box there and try and win a title. I know Oscar Rivas had it. Babic potentially could win it here, but until we get kind of a
new weight division always needs that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It always needs that, and then you can get some gas behind it that way. It's the same with the sanctioning bodies. When a new one turned up, they needed, the IBF had Hagler, didn't they? And the WBO, although he was well past it, I think they had Hearns towards the end of the 80s. You need someone to give anything new some legitimacy. Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even that, it's changed even in the last couple of years. I remember at the time, Mauricio said, we're going to move the cruiserweight limit back to 190, and then we're going to have a bridgerweight division, which is 34 pounds worth of division between that. And
that make more sense, I guess, but then they didn't do it.
Stopped, so which I think, again, at the time, I mean, it was quite not strange, and certainly would never question a man of his stature, but Don Majeski was the person who put this forward. And I remember being on the call at the time, and I don't think anybody really thought about the 190 stuff, because it was like, okay, yeah, we'll bring that back down to 190. And then, I remember speaking to Mauricio afterwards and said, what about the cruiserweight champion who's been making £200 for his whole career? What does he do? He has to cut a leg off. I mean, actually, as it happens now, the WBC cruiserweight champion is actually Badu Jack, who probably could do 190 because he's naturally quite smaller.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still very much a developing division, I suppose. But back to the fight itself, Babic. The whole Babic, with no disrespect, it's sort of kind of the Babic folklore ride that we've been on. If he somehow, if he was able to kind of cap that off by winning a world title, it would really be something to behold, wouldn't it?
No, it absolutely would. And what you're looking at with stuff like this, and this will definitely be what boxers are looking at, particularly our big pal Al Siesta, who's head of international boxing down there now. He's got his eye on these kinds of fights, because he's done a lot of creative matchmaking in Eastern Europe, Russia down the years. I commentated on his Cold Wars during COVID, which I thought was a great idea. Very Siesta, did a really good job with it, made some good fights. What he's thinking is, Alen Babic wins the World Bridgerweight title, take him back to Croatia and get him boxing in some kind of football stadium. Get them to come out for him. I was in Albania last year for Florian Marku. Florian Marku was never going to win a world title. He won't like me saying it, but he's not. He's not going to. They don't care over there. They don't care. You just need to get him out over there. He did 15,000 probably, Florian, in Tirana. I don't really know what the potential is in Croatia, but he will sell the fight as much as he can, Babic, and if you can hold him up as being a professional world champion, they've got Hrgovic, but you can probably do something with him in a really interesting location, and that's That's what they're thinking with it. 100%. That's what they're thinking.
Yeah, very Alcesta is definitely something. If you know Alcesta, and kind of even people who've watched Alcesta's interviews and the way he's been, there's definitely a specific very siesta.
You get him out in Zagreb, or you get him out in Split, or wherever you want to do it, wherever it sits best. Then I don't see why you couldn't. It doesn't have to be a football stadium as well. I've thrown that out there because it's always a possibility. I don't really know what the potential is, but get him to ram out 5,000. Imagine the atmosphere. It'd be great.
And he does sell it, as you say. You've got the Savage and coming out dressed in whatever he's going to be wearing on the night. Just on Rozanski, you mentioned there about his wins over Arthur Szpilka and Izu Agunu. Seems to be kind of very much built from the same cloth as Babic. Comes forward, I don't think necessarily the tightest technically, comes forward and lets his hands go. I'm very interested to see what happens if he hits Babic. We've seen Babic now in his last couple of fights. He boxed Alen Babic, David Spilmont, and he was hurt in both of those fights. He was really hurt at the end of the Babic fight. He got hit after the bell, and he was really on Queer Street at the start of the 10th round and managed to get through it. So I'm very interested to see what happens if and when Rozanski's able to get forward, get past the kind of marauding Babic style, and land something on his chin.
Yeah, and I think that's a question for the pair of them, and that's what makes it interesting, because they both. Babic does seem to have some vulnerabilities, and finding a way through to test them out has never appeared to be the most difficult thing in the world. So I don't really expect this to go the distance, this fight. It's a bit of a cliche, but it really could just be a case of who lands clean first. That could be enough. And I think it will be very entertaining to watch whilst it lasts. And that's what it's doing there. That's why it's at the top of this bill. And Babic is travelling to Poland for it. He's obviously got no kind of reservations about that whatsoever. And you look at these two shows they've taken on the road, Boxer. The one in Paris. We had Dan on that, Dan Aziz, and that was a massive night for him. So that brought a domestic fighter in a big fight, a European title fight. But then Takam Yoka was always an interesting fight where you looked at it and just think, that's kind of fascinating. Name-wise, Babic and Rozanski aren't the same, but when you kind of look at the pair of them, you do just think to yourself, okay, yeah, that I don't imagine that being a boring watch.
Absolutely not. I'm an unashamed member of the Babic, the Savage Army.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to watch him fight, and particularly, look, if it's for a world title and it's going to be another fight where he's going to be in a rock'em sock'em style fight, then I'm all for it.
A good match is a good match, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's as simple as that, and I don't really ever understand why people have a problem kind of admitting that sometimes, because they don't have to be two elite fighters to watch it, to see a really good fight. It's that simple. It's like if you watch two top teams go at it in the Champions League, it can be a great technical match, but it's not going to be a thriller minute. Whereas, there was this incredible game in the National League between Wrexham and Notts County a couple of weeks ago. It's just, comparing different sports is never ideal, but people will understand what I'm saying. A good match is a good match, and it doesn't matter if they're not going to set the world alight and the Saudis aren't going to throw $500 million at them to go and box over there. Who cares? I think they'll give us what we expect to get on Saturday.
Absolutely, and we expect violence in Rozanski versus Babic. Moving on, a certain Martin Bakole versus Ihor Shevadzutsky. Bakole's kind of, you mentioned there about Carlos Takam and Tony Yoka. He, of course, went over to Paris and put a real beating on Tony Yoka 12 months or so ago. He's not boxed since, Martin Bakole, but he's there. I think he's number 2 with the WBA. He's in the conversation. He is now, of course, with Boxer, and a bit of a dark horse in the heavyweight division, I think, Bakole.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. He's the problem really for him is getting fights that are going to elevate him in other rankings and get him up that ladder, because he is good enough that you would look at him and really wonder what was in it for you if you were above him, or you felt that you were above him. Why would you? That's the issue anyone's got who's trying to really force their way onto that top tier, and I feel like that is the problem, because a win like that against Yoka, what that should lead to further opportunities, but it can close doors just as easily as it opens them for exactly the reason I've just given. And it was it was a comprehensive one-sided beating, and they're probably the worst scorecards I've ever seen, I think, for that fight. And that really does, that's no cheap statement. I've seen Shevadzutsky on one of Alex Krasiuk's cards. I went over to Kiev at the end of 2021 and he was in with Kamil Sokolovsky. He's a big lad, hence the fact that he's called Hulk. And from what I remember, he was technically kind of set up well enough, but there was nothing special about him. And Bakole, I think, will just chip away and see if he can force the stoppage. What I like about Bakole is that he's got a good bit of variety about him. I think he's a clever fighter because I remember watching him against Kevin Johnson, and I know people will say, well, Kevin Johnson is Kevin Johnson, he's well over the hill, but when Bakole stopped him, it was still at the point where not many people were doing that, and that's still the case now. Yeah. And he did it because he just got on top of him, nice fast hands, varied up with the weight of shot, and just kept hitting him until the referee stepped in and called it off, because he knew that Johnson can handle someone who looks to try and go in there and take him out with one big clean shot. So he didn't do that. He is a good fighter, no question, but it's just who'd you get for him next, assuming all goes well on the weekend, to kind of get him moving upwards?
Yeah, I mean, Carlos Takam, I think you
Takam would be, Takam would be a good name for him. I think that'd be a good fight. I think people would like that fight. You think about him now signed with Boxer. Everybody in the UK knows who Takam is because obviously fought AJ, fought Joe Joyce, fought Derek Chisora. He's been on some big nights over here, so people know him. That probably is the most obvious thing to do with him.
Yeah, and you think Carlos Takam, he'd fight anybody. He always has done. He's not really shown any willingness to sort of.
And that team Bakole will want someone bigger than that, of course, but I don't realistically see how that would happen.
He's going to have to get himself into some sort of mandatory position, isn't he?
I think so.
And we've just seen Deontay Wilder has been kind of plonked in at number 1 with the WBA. WBA mandatory, of course, is next with Daniel Dubois, which means once that fight happens, the WBA mandatory goes straight to the back of the rotation. You're going to have to wait a little while there. So it kind of makes sense about what you were saying about him having to be ranked with other governing bodies, or maybe taking a fight against somebody who's got a higher standard in the sport. But again, it comes back to, okay, why would you fight Martin Bakole? He's a very good fighter. You mentioned the variation. I think one of the criticisms I think I had of him a while back was that I just felt like he could do a bit more sometimes. But I feel like he's kind of addressed that in recent performances. Like,
people kind of said that towards the end of the fight against Yoka, like, why didn't he just get him out of there? But I can totally understand why he didn't, because he absolutely 100% didn't need to. Yeah. And the only way it could go wrong was if he got a bit reckless, got a bit greedy, and Yoka somehow found something, which didn't look likely, but that was the only way that could go wrong. And as I say, the cards were an absolute shambles. He won every round in that fight. So, yeah, it's it's not something I can see happening. But would he fight Zhang Bakole?
I'm sure he would.
I think he probably would take it against anyone, to be honest, because they're of a... I mean, Billy Nelson's been banging the drum for him for forever. And you need people to do that for you, because Martin doesn't really say a lot, to be honest. He's got an unbelievable backstory that isn't out there maybe as much as it should be. He's a prince, basically. Grew up in the Lualua region of Congo. His dad was the king. And that's his background. His older brother, Makabu, who we saw lose to Badu Jack, he went off to South Africa to pursue a pro boxing career, and he eventually followed him, and everything went from there. And now he lives in Airdrie with Billy Nelson. Like, it's, he is most definitely the only Congolese prince in that village. But it's great, it's a really, really good story. And like I say, it's probably not out there as much as it should be. And he can definitely fight. I remember, funnily enough, I don't really pay too much attention to anything anyone says to me about commentary, about anything I've said. I'll always listen, but it's generally kind of opinion based on, I thought you were a bit too this or a bit too that. And I don't get a lot of it anyway. But something Billy said to me once was actually one of the very few things that I actually paid attention to and thought, actually, yeah, you're right about that. Because I remember after he lost to Hunter, he was back on Sky not that long after that, or it was after the win against Mariusz Vach anyway, and I did one of his fights.
That was in Poland.
Yeah.
For the Polish heavyweight title, by the way.
It was. I did one of his fights, and it was fine. And then he was on another card, and I saw Billy the day of the fight, and he just wandered over to me. He's not backwards in coming forward, is he? And just said something like, 23 seconds, Andy. And I was just like, what? 23 seconds it took you to mention Martin Bakole's defeat to Michael Hunter. And I said, well, Bill, it happened. It's part of the story. And he said, yeah, but, it's not the only thing he's ever done. And I had to think about that, and I thought, actually, that's a fair point. And I took that on board kind of across the board, to be honest, where some things, they did happen a while ago, and people have rebuilt since then. And yeah, you can mention it at some point, but you have to allow people to move on from that. It's not the thing that defines them. So, Billy probably thinks that people don't listen to him enough, but I did listen to him on that one.
Okay, that's enough Billy Nelson praise for one podcast. But you mentioned there about the Tony Yoka fight. But, I'm going to upset him now, but I don't care. The Michael Hunter loss, which is a little while ago now, it was at York Hall.
Yeah.
I felt like that was just a case of, look, and Bakole is super talented, and we've all seen that in the ring, and Billy Nelson would have seen more of it than all of us, because obviously he's his trainer. Do you feel like there was an element of them looking past Hunter? Obviously, Hunter being a cruiserweight at the time, coming up. I remember at the time was a Cyclone promotion show, and it was kind of, beat him, get him in the heavyweight mix and what have you. But it looks as though he's learned, whatever lessons that he needed to learn from that fight, because since then he has been good. He's beat Sergei Kuzmin, you mentioned Kevin Johnson, obviously Mariusz Vach, which at the time, stopping Mariusz Vach then, stopping him at all is
yeah,
good.
And to take it straight off the back of Hunter in Poland, that was shit or bust. And you don't do that unless you've got total confidence in yourself as a fighter, and your trainer doesn't do that unless they've got total confidence in you.
Yeah, because otherwise,
you're finished, aren't you?
Exactly, a back-to-back defeat at that stage of your career. Just trying to have a look now at some of the other heavyweight rankings and to see where Mr. Bakole is. He has,
outside of that top 5 or 6, where you would, in no particular order, or people might have different orders, but what people generally go for is Fury, Usyk, Wilder, Joshua, and now probably Zhang, or Ruiz, with Ruiz at 6. That's I would say, because Ruiz has recently been a unified champion. That's your top 5 or 6, and then outside of that, it's kind of Hrgovic. It's kind of, Hrgovic beat Zhang, but anyway, you know what I mean. And then there's Joyce. Those are the ones that people are talking about, and that's what he needs to break into, the kind of lower end of that, doesn't he? But it's hard, because why would any of them fight him, as we were saying previously?
There's Arslanbek Makhmudov, who is number 5 with the WBA, and Bakole's obviously number 2, and he's also number 5 with the WBC, and Bakole's number 7. That kind of makes sense from a political point of view.
Yeah, that would work. But if you're Makhmudov, again,
who's also fought Takam and beat Takam last year. Yeah, the Takam fight, I think, makes a lot of sense. So there you go, Billy. Bit of free matchmaking for you. Martin Bakole.
They liked it next door.
There we go, yeah. Martin Bakole to fight Zhilei Zhang, I think would be good. Yeah, that's the one. Makhmudov fights are not really going to happen. Takam, I think, is the most practical, but Zhilei Zhang on the back of the win over Joe Joyce, I think, is the sexy option.
Yeah, over in Beijing.
Yeah, for sure. Why not? Or in the Congo. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, right. We were going to talk a little bit more detail about this card, but we're now kind of hearing that Caroline Dubois is unfortunately not on the card. So we're going to wrap it up. Well, obviously, today's podcast has been primarily focused around Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia, which we're going to see this weekend. But before we finish things, I'm going to go to you for prediction time. Alen Babic versus Lukasz Rozanski for the WBC Bridgerweight Championship of the World. How do you see it going, Andy? The Babic weight
If you ask me tomorrow, I could give you a different answer, and if you ask me the day after, I could give you a different answer again. But I'll say Babic. I'll say Babic by stoppage, because I don't see how this goes the distance in 5.
Okay, I'm going to go for Babic by stoppage as well in 5.
Okay.
So there we go. An early night for Alen Babic. And Martin Bakole versus Hulk, because it's easier to say than Shevadzutsky. Well, there we go.
I mean, he is a big boy. But I feel like if Bakole goes about it in the way that he did against someone like Kevin Johnson, for example, and is busy, then he can force a stoppage. He can force a stoppage. Maybe not with chinning the guy, but with the referee just deciding that's enough now.
Okay, you going out to Poland?
We're doing a commentary from Sky. Andy's going out. Andy Scott's going out. John Dennon's going out. Don't think they were super confident about what they might find on the ground from the kind of technological point of view, which is understandable.
Interesting. I'll be in Cardiff this weekend while Ben Faruqi is out having the time of his life in Las Vegas. But that's enough from us today. Thanks to everybody for sitting around and listening to us all ramble, including Barry Jones, who of course had to leave us slightly early. But from me, Rob Tebbett, from Andy Clark and Barry Jones, who's obviously left us. Thanks very much for stopping by today for the ID Boxing Podcast. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and let us know who you think wins this weekend, Gervonta Davis or Ryan Garcia. Thanks very much for catching up with you. We'll see you next time.